Yo, today we's looking at Hookup Tales. It's a very short furry game slash visual novel, and I do got some criticism for this boy. The main thing I want to focus on with this one is dialogue, cause I feel like the dialogue could use a bit more love. The game has you seduce a furry girl, which a main character met in high school. Now you're at a bar and she shows up, and you can probably figure out the rest from here. The game is only one night long, so it's not like a classic dating sim and more like a snippet of a dating slice of life kind of thing. My problem comes with player choice, because there is player choice, but not really. The choices are very limited to only 2 options, and the game heavily wants you to pick one over the other for the majority of the game. And I get making choice limited due to lack of resources. The more shit you put in the game, the more resources it's gonna demand. And especially with small teams working on super unmarketable NSFW games, resources are just scarce. Still though, the only choices we're given is through dialogue, and when the dialogue choices are always structured as right answer and wrong answer, this gets boring pretty quickly. The only choices you're essentially being given is, do I want to pick the answer to make Fox Girl happy, or do I want to ruin the mood and or get a game over screen? Player choice just isn't as satisfying when there's an option that the game wants you to pick, and if you get punished for choosing anything else. If there was a challenge to this, like if it wasn't very obvious which option the game wants you to choose, then this could be interesting. But usually it doesn't take a lot of brain cells to see through this. Especially when the game very consistently puts the right answer in the top and the wrong one in the bottom. It wasn't always like this. Like one of the first choices in the game, which I actually thought was interesting, there's like a moment where you gotta remember the girl's name because, you know, the main character met her before. And obviously this is the first time that us, the player, has seen her, so we don't know her name. But if you're sharp, unlike I was in my first run, you might notice she's actually looking at the correct answer. That was kind of clever. That was interesting. Or when you get home to her, choices start becoming a bit more loose, so you can actually choose what you want, some of the time at least. And there's actually a time when the right answer was on the bottom, after we've sort of gotten used to all the right answers being on the top. That was sort of interesting, but again, I didn't really like how formulated the choices was with right answer, wrong answer in the first place. But building a little pattern of right answer always being on top and then breaking it was at least interesting. Generally though, formulated dialogue is something I'm not really fond of, and to better explain why, let me show you an example of 2 games where dialogue options made all the difference. The first one has been mocked mercilessly for its dialogue choices slash lack thereof, and the other one which has been praised for the exact opposite reason. Fallout 4 doesn't really give you dialogue options as much as it gives you 4 predetermined personalities that you can choose between. Left option is always sarcastic asshole, up option is always generic good guy, so on. But if you want to play a run as your own character and not just one of the game's packaged personalities, well, the only option you have is to jury-rig answers together from the various pre-packaged personality dialogue options. But this can get major awkward because A, you don't always know what these options mean. You don't know what tone your character is gonna say the line with. You don't know exactly how the line comes out or what it's gonna be followed by, because your choice is boiled down to just sarcastic, but like, how the fuck am I supposed to know if that means playful sarcastic or demeaning sarcastic? And sometimes the labels are just straight up misleading.
You know, in 100 years, when I finally die, I only hope I go to hell so I can kill you all over again, you piece of shit.
And B, it feels like the game has already put reasonings behind all your choices. The choice you're given is between options like yes or sarcastic, and then your main character makes an extended dialogue based on that short answer that you chose. The problem here is that you might roleplay as a cold character who helps someone because it might benefit you in the long run, or a nice guy who helps someone because you believe it's the right thing to do. But when you agree to helping someone and your main character automatically goes, yes, I will help you because it's the right thing to do, the game kinda strips that choice from you. It's really difficult to put your own motivations and reasonings into your character when the game keeps doing that shit for you. The game isn't designed around your role-playing experience. Instead, you actively have to roleplay around the choices that the game has made for you. It's a comparable thing that I'm experiencing in Hookup Tales. Definitely not one-to-one the same, but the game always has two choices, and almost always with fixed outcomes. And once you realize that, it's a lot less like carving my own path and a lot more like I'm awkwardly trying to piece together my own way based on these only half choices that the game gives me. I don't feel like I'm in control, and I'm quickly just tempted to give up trying to do my own thing and just base my choices around what I think the game wants me to do. And that takes a lot of the fun out of this for me. So what do I think the solution to this is? Well, that's when the other game I mentioned comes in. New Vegas doesn't have 4 or any number of fixed personalities you get to choose answers from. Instead, you're given a number of options based on what different things would make sense to say in this situation. For example, if a character would ask you to do something, then the Fallout 4 way of player choice would be to give you 4 answers based around the 4 stock personalities. Meanwhile, the New Vegas way of approaching this would be to give you dialogue options of yes, no, and why do you want me to do it? These answers are way more ambiguous and they're not voice acted, meaning that how your character says this is left to your imagination. Your character doesn't say anything aside from the dialogue lines you choose, so you're always in control of what your character says. Sometimes you get dialogue options which have a certain tone to them, but unlike in Fallout 4, here we actually get to see the entire line instead of just a vague label saying sarcastic. This allows you way better control, and this, I think, is the way to go with dialogue. When Miss Vixen asks if drinking wine makes her look refined, don't just let me say yes or no. Tell me what these two options are gonna be followed by. I don't know if nah, ... is gonna be followed by a cynical rant about wine, or whether my character is gonna say something witty like, class is about a lot more than just what you drink at a bar. Maybe also add a neutral option, like asking into her tastes in wine, maybe followed by her asking if you like wine. And then you could get a new choice with options like, I've never been a wine person, always wanted to get into wine but it's really expensive, and maybe an option to say that you're also a wine person followed by you two geeking out about different flavors of wine. There's options, it's just about capitalizing on them. Of course, branching dialogue trees like this requires more work, but I think there's at least elements of what I've talked about which you can still incorporate or at least consider, like fleshing out exactly where these dialogue options is gonna go and making them less, formatted. If you don't have the time or resources to make branching dialogue trees, there's still things you can do. You can have very linear dialogue paths while still giving players a good number of options. Monster Mind, another furry game, is really good at this. It's pretty normal for the game to give you a good number of options, like 3 to 5-ish dialogue options, and usually with every kind of answer you could ask for. After picking one of them, the game gives a couple of unique lines. It can just be like 5 to 6 unique lines based on your choice, and then they all sort of connect back to like a main track, and then the dialogue continues from there. This isn't as cool as branching dialogue trees, but again, this is a small fandom with games made by very small crews, so if resources are limited, I totally get this. I think the way to go is finding a balance between branching dialogue trees and small choices that all connect back to the same dialogue path. In any case, I'd still way rather see this Monster Mind style of choices than these kind of formatted good answer, bad answer, where the game is just nudging you to pick one kind of option. That's what I had to say about this one. Drop a comment if I missed anything, or if you have something to add, I'd love to hear your take on this too. Love y'all's age of vegetables.